In this tutorial, we're going to look at classes in ES6 and how you can use them to build your own objects that consist of a number of functions and variables. So I won't delve into the old way of constructing objects in JavaScript before ES6, but it's just worth pointing out that you can still use that method, and all the ES6 syntax really is a nicer and easier way of constructing new objects, otherwise known as syntactic sugar, on the existing JavaScript way of doing this. So a class is a blueprint for constructing a new object, and you'll generally base them around a particular thing. In this case, I'm going to be constructing a new user. So when an object is created from a class, a special function is called the constructor. So a constructor is simply a function that may or may not take a number of arguments, and then does some setup for our object. And this gets called when we create a new user object. And the variable names that we assign values to with the this keyword are available directly on the newly constructed user object. So in addition to the constructor, we can put any number of functions that we want within our user class. And we can call those functions on any objects that we create from this class. So these functions within the user class are known as methods, and the variable names that are assigned to the class with the this keyword are known as properties or member variables. There are also some special functions that you can set up on classes called getters and setters that allow you to either set the value of a particular member variable or return its value. But you can run into issues with naming, as you can see from the output from our console here, if you try and use a getter or setter name that is the same as one of your member variables. So it's common practice to prefix those member variables, usually with an underscore. And now we no longer have an issue with conflict of names. So you might be able to see that the setter function has a particular use in being able to set the value of a member variable directly, but really our password getter doesn't really do much other than return the password member from inside our class. But where getters are really useful is if you want to modify the value before you return it. So all of the methods that we've created inside of our user class must be called on a new user object that we've created with the new keyword. For example, we couldn't just say user.show. And this makes sense because the data inside of the show function is related to the user object that we create, but there might be times when you want to call a method that doesn't rely on information from a newly created object. For example, we might want to get a login URL, which isn't actually specific to any one user. So if we want to call this method directly from the class name, we can set it to be a static method. So anytime you don't need to rely on data from a newly created object, you can set a class method to be static, and then it's available to be used without creating a new object. So that's just a simple example of creating classes in ES6 with constructors, methods and member variables, and also getters, setters and static methods.